And welcome back to another edition of ExPats, folks. It has been 3 weeks. We've, haven't talked since before the Super Bowl, and we got a lot to discuss.
All right, dude. Before we get into that, I got to cut you off. There's some stuff I need to get off my chest. I'm a fraud. I'm a certified fool that knows not much about the game of football. I get all my football knowledge via TikTok, and I still don't have the attention span to watch those videos. I stopped watching the Super Bowl midway through the first quarter when I realized Kayshon Boutte wasn't playing. I made a stupid bet on Taylor making an appearance during the national anthem, and when that prop didn't hit, there was no real reason for me to watch the game. I really only watch football games when Nickelodeon does a broadcast, as SpongeBob's analysis is simple enough for me to digest. Adult commentators use big words that I'm unfamiliar with, and I can't focus unless I see the players getting slimed. Okay, now I'm actually speaking for myself. Those were Josh's words. This is my part. I've always been, and I will continue to be, a Cincinnati Bengals fan. It's just that I like watching them during the years they make the playoffs. I hate Drake May. I hate Mike Vrabel. And I hate six-time NBA champion and consensus GOAT, Michael Jordan.
Wow.
LeBron and Mahomes. LeBron and Mahomes will continue to be the GOATs in their respective sports, and I still fantasize about Coach Ben Johnson leaving his wife for me.
Oh, nice.
Also, being tall is overrated. No one likes that I'm 6'5", and I would much rather be the height of my ExPats partner, a man that actually watches ball and is a crisp 5'10". Josh, my better half, please continue to carry me the way that Scottie Pippen carried Michael Jordan.
I got you, buddy.
P.S.
Gotcha. Whoa.
I have more. I only like Australia because I think.
I hear that first part.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Let me. P.S. I only like Australia because I think for some stupid reason that the women there will like me more than they do here. They won't. If I do move there, I'll be stuck in a mediocre country with no women, no money, and no reason to live. The NFL should never have scheduled a game there. It was stupid. I'm stupid. And finally, Australia is stupid.
Wow, Australia's stupid. Oh my! Listen, we might have international fans. We don't know. We can't be disparaging against other countries, Lucas. I mean, look. I'll say a lot of things about Lucas in a joking, degrading way on this podcast, but I've never taken away his Cincinnati Bengals fandom from him. I just didn't want to mention it live on the air because he's the kind of guy that had like Chad Johnson, Giovanni Bernard jerseys hanging up on his wall when it was convenient for him in high school to make friends by using the Cincinnati Bengals as kind of a jumping off point. He would absolutely do a 10 out of 10 dive off that diving board. However, I was willing to look past it and forgive him, but Lucas, you're a big man for coming on this platform and talking about, I think, your weaknesses just so freely. The Michael Jordan one was excessive. I think he's the GOAT. You called him the consensus GOAT, but clearly not because, there's one person right here that doesn't believe so. But, hey, LeBron James is a fantastic all-around NBA player, and I really can't blame you. The Mahomes one is going to stir the pot a little bit, ruffle some tail feathers. I think a lot of people in New England won't be happy, and you might not have a career in New England based on your just adamant dismissal of Thomas Edward Patrick Brady II. So, Lucas, thank you for speaking your truth, and I hope we can move forward and grow and be healthy and just kind of jump into the 2025 season with our heads clear, no guilty consciences. You have a weight off your chest, and I'm really proud of you, buddy.
Yeah, no, my chest feels lighter. That's the least I can say about that.
You're 6'5" and weigh 120 pounds. Your chest was always pretty light, so I'm not entirely sure. But I did appreciate you talking about my height in a very flattering light. Just thank you so much.
Of course, man. It's the right height to be.
So for those in the know, which is probably just our only fan, Colby, we made a bet with a couple of Super Bowl props, money lines, all that stuff. And the loser had to read a statement in their own words, like Lucas said, speaking their truths. And the best thing about it is that I was patently wrong. And I will die. I will die on the hill that if you still replay that game the next day, I still wouldn't bet against the Chiefs. Now, I think
Oh, heck
I
no.
underestimated the Eagles in a lot of ways. The combination of Spags, Andy Reid, and Patrick Mahomes, it's like, Brady, Josh, and Belichick, right? Like it's really hard to bet against them, especially twice in a row. So
Agreed.
I still don't necessarily hate my take, but Lucas was spot on about a lot of the things that the Eagles needed to do to dominate that game, and we both were wrong that it had to be through the channel of Saquon Barkley. I mean, I
Yeah.
think you're higher on Jalen Hurts than I am. He's earned a lot of my respect back. I think after that first Super Bowl run, and then just the disappointment that was the season after, I thought he had to earn trust because people were putting him in a lot of lofty conversations. I thought prematurely, even though he had a great Super Bowl in 2022, it just hadn't translated to team success the next season, and I didn't find him to be an elite passer. However, I think Jalen Hurts is a winner, and I think he put that on full display during the Super Bowl. He really proved a lot of doubters wrong, and I think now he's probably earned his place amongst the elites in the game, or at least in those conversations, in those spaces. So, Lucas, props to you for getting a lot of the Super Bowl takes right. You just happened to bet horrendously, and it worked out so well for me. I didn't even think that the Eagles could both win and I would win the betting process. And it just so happened to work out so well, just really so well for me. I can't state enough how happy I am that I got to see the Chiefs get mauled and Lucas have to read the very true statements that he prepared for us this afternoon. So honestly, it's been a great month for me. Even though I was wrong in a lot of ways, I still feel right, just feel right and whole.
And you should. I took a couple stupid bets. I regret. DeAndre Hopkins sold the freaking farm to screw me over. Actually, no, we both had that
We
same one.
both cashed on that. There was two things that we did, which is you bet both the Saquon over and the A.J. Brown over, which is I feel like neither of them hit, which was surprising. But I think if you had to bet one, you might have to hedge your bets on the other. You went all in on both and missed both. I just missed Saquon, but I was able to, thanks to that nice OPI penalty in the first quarter, not have to throw. But if you we can be like, damn, that one catch changed everything. That's like A.J. Brown every week even if you watch it, he gets a couple deep looks from Jalen Hurts, not much else. And not that he is underutilized for his talent level in that offense, but that's kind of the whole point of the offense in general. And
Agreed.
Depending on how you want to read into his post Super Bowl statements about not being happy, not being satisfied, and not being happy is a stretch, but not being satisfied with his work and just wanting to keep growing and becoming, a leader in this game. There might be some speculation there about whether or not he does have a long-term future in Philly. But I think right now, for the 2025 offseason, for the 2025 New England Patriots, it's kind of tough to see a path forward there.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to give up if we're serious about talking about A.J. Brown joining the team. I think a month, 2 months ago, when we're in this playoff run just starting, I think that it actually was a legitimate chance. But obviously they balled and they crushed the playoffs, and he had and his ability to win one-on-one kind of changes that. I mean, not to throw any shade at Devonta Smith, but he is the horse that allows you to just. I mean, at one point, Jalen Hurts looked at him and started throwing the finger guns and just threw him a deep ball, and I was like, that was hype. But no, I mean, I think a lot of the time, I think they did as much as the Chiefs did sell out to stop the run. They also did some really cool things that I had never seen until watching some of the TikTok clips that I've seen breaking down. If anybody, I don't want to promote somebody else fully, but if you haven't seen Football Digest's breakdown of Jalen Hurts on TikTok, he shows a lot of these
So you do get all your football information from TikTok. You weren't lying about that part either.
It's a combination of Twitter and TikTok and a little bit of YouTube thrown in there, but mostly those Twitter and TikTok. And then some Madden too, and some college football. But Spags was in his bag, and Hurts just kind of won pre-snap, which you don't really think a ton about when you think of Jalen Hurts. But there were some really cool looks, and Football Digest does a great job of breaking down all the clips. And there was one point where the Chiefs are showing too high, and they roll both safeties to the right, and then play quarters on the other side. So it's like it was really cool. Like they rotated, started showing 3 pre-snap, and then like fully committed into cover 4 and dropped like both of their corners on the other side.
So
And
you're saying
like
they were showing like cover 2 man and then just completely flipping the script, playing like just an all-out quarter zone.
it was like they had 2 high safeties, and like as the ball was like about to be snapped, they started rolling and like the left started moving into the middle, being like, okay, like we're gonna show 3 and the 2 corners on the 2 outside corners are gonna drop. But then the right safety just played the right, like all the way over to the right, and he became the outside right corner. And then this left safety became the right inside, and then like they had like a nickel corner or whatever, and then McDuffie played the other outside corner, and like I didn't even know that you could think about doing stuff like that. And like Hurts, to his credit, like he just balled.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's Spags for you, right? Like Spags is a continual innovator in the game of football, and like what you're talking about right there. Those looks, those pre-snap looks that change like on a dime, especially when you've done a pretty succinct job as a defensive front stopping Saquon Barkley. I had a feeling I didn't, again, like you describe it in very specific ball knowledge detail that I don't know if I could ever verbalize that way. But I had a sense that that's how the game would go, and that Jalen Hurts couldn't overcome those looks. And to his credit, he did exactly that. And it wasn't like the most perfect Super Bowl performance. It wasn't even, I think, statistically as good as the one he had 2 years ago, at least from a passing perspective. But it still was just the game just won, pre-snap in a lot of ways. Just mentally understanding your looks, understanding your reads. I mean, you have that clip on the sideline of Hurts and Smith basically being like, "We're throwing that ball." Like they knew what they were dialing up before they were dialing it up, just to put the nail in the coffin. And it was exciting, dude. It was fun, and I think I was concerned going in because the Eagles had I don't want to say a weaker road to the Super Bowl, but again, like you're playing a Rams team that's a little aging, a little beat up, and then you're getting them while there's a snowstorm. That's kind of a gimme. Not like really, because I have a lot of respect for Sean McVay and Matt Stafford, but I think that wasn't necessarily a full test. And then you go and play a real overachieving team in Washington that kind of had no business being in the conference championship. I think if you had fully healthy Niners and Lions teams this season, one of those teams is probably making it to that dance. But again, full props to Dan Quinn, that whole staff, Jaden Daniels. Like that's an exciting unit they got up there. Looking forward to the future. So they came against what was probably their toughest opponent and made it look like pretty much any other playoff game that they walked away with handily. And it was just really impressive, a really impressive, all-encompassing performance. And it was really like a pseudo-sexual experience watching that defense just absolutely obliterate what obviously was a mismatched offensive line from Kansas City. But nonetheless, like, I don't even think Kansas City had like an ace in the hole with that, where they moved Tooney back into guard, because it was almost like they had no other options, and it wouldn't have mattered either way.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have mattered if Kingsley Suamataia all of a sudden came out and was, a quality starter at tackle, or if they were able to find these other answers. They just had a lot of holes at that position, and it just typified in, Joe Tooney having to play a spot where he hasn't played since maybe high school or something. I don't know if he ever
played a little bit in college.
Played a little in college. So,
yeah.
I mean, real impressive win. It was fantastic to watch Mahomes put up, what is, at least from like a passer rating standpoint, a bad game, and look sloppy. And obviously he's still going to make some great throws, great plays, but some of the misses, it was essentially like watching like the Drake May UNC tape, where you're like, why are you even making that throw? Like, everything else, like fundamentally you look great. You have, such an understanding of the defense of the field, and you make some really difficult throws. But it came down to some real lapses in judgment on the part of Patrick Mahomes. And then obviously what was a diminished talent pool from a receiving standpoint on that team. And I think you're not getting Isaiah Pacheco at your best that late in the season after such a long injury, and you weren't going to have much out of Kareem Hunt outside of, some quality goal line carries if you even get there. So it really kind of just all amalgamated into one bloodshed laden, game of, it wasn't even like a chess game. It was more like a boxing match. And,
Yeah.
Kansas City was out cold in the mat after like 10 minutes, and it was awesome. It was real fun. I enjoyed it, and I know you enjoyed it too.
No, I definitely did. Something I like it's kind of hard to remember exactly what I was saying before this Super Bowl, just because like it was so long ago at this point. But something I was big on was like if the Eagles could get ahead and let Fangio call whatever he wanted, like that bodes well for the Eagles defense.
Yep.
And the fact that they got home with 4 on like every freaking play, it seemed like that's game changing. Like I think they had like nearly I think it was like 40% pressure rate, maybe even higher than that, and like no blitzes. Like that's, I mean, obviously like you might want to blitz and like you might have to blitz, but if you don't have to and you can just let Jalen Carter and freaking Jalix Hunt and Josh Sweat just get home on every snap, like that's more guys you have in coverage, more chances you have for interceptions, more chances you have for locking up the play. You generate sacks with coverage. Like that was a dominant performance by the Eagles defense, and it may not look like it like 5-10 years from now, but I mean, Mahomes got schlapped, and like we both love saying that. So like, yeah, I don't know.
Could you imagine the 2024 Patriots not blitzing once an entirety of a game against a competitive team and getting maybe even a single hurry on a quarterback? Like, I mean, if you're the Patriots, you have to like unload Gonzalez here and there. You got to really play with, I think, some of our athletic safety hybrid players, even though it wasn't necessarily their season to remember, particularly from Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers, and for various on and off field reasons. But I mean, it was stunning to watch. And I think, honestly, for those of us that had hoped that the Patriots, now I've, infamously said that we're not making the playoffs next year, and I still probably would stand on that take. But I think seeing how a lot of these teams came together and were able to make competitive runs, notably the Commanders, I thought, you know what, maybe the Patriots can be a lot more competitive, just given how poorly coached we were last year and how that is bound to change. I'm not saying we're going to be, a top 5 coaching staff in the league overnight. I don't necessarily think that's a reasonable expectation, but I do, however, think we'll go from being arguably the worst coaching staff in the league to being middle of the pack at worst, I would hope, just from a coaching standpoint. So just from the guys understanding where they need to be in that process. But just like knowing that we have the cap space we have, knowing we have some draft capital, just we have to get better. But watching the clinic that team put on, I realized there's so many different areas of our team that need just significant overhaul that it's not necessarily wise to go throw in the bag at 2 free agents this offseason and to get like hypothetically 30 more positive plays in a year. I know it's going to be more than that, but like if you're trying to buy and build wins, you got to do it from the ground up, and you got to do it with youth, particularly through the draft. And then I think, honestly, from a receiver standpoint, probably a better.
Yeah.
So when we can have the talk about T. Higgins, about Chris Godwin, because it seems like in the case of Higgins at least, it just changes every week, the news.
Yeah.
I mean, I have here, I think it was Daniel Jeremiah reported, I want to say, either that it was Phil Perry talking about how
Phil Perry had a good report.
Sources around the league. Now, it was like a very vague thing, so it's not like we can really take anything definitive from it, but he was like, sources around the league are saying, like, yeah, I'll believe that T. Higgins gets extended when I see it, were his words. And
yeah,
we know he's probably getting the franchise tag because at the very least they want some sort of assets for that player in a trade. But I mean, what would you be willing to give up for a guy that's on the tag? So you can, in theory, get him next year. And but he's in the prime of his career, a really physically gifted player, not obviously on the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson tier, but still immediately becomes your best offensive asset outside of the quarterback. But even then, like, we haven't seen enough from Drake to really declare him the best player on offense yet. So I don't know. That'll be interesting. I don't know if you have any thoughts on what those conflicting reports we get of T's definitely going to sign a long-term extension. That's the plan between the big three in that offense versus, other guys aren't buying it in the league in terms of like top brass, executive personnel, GMs, and all those things don't seem to be as confident. So that's interesting.
I'm with you. I'll see it when I believe. Like, I'll believe it when I see it. This whole thing is just like so.
It's nauseating.
Yeah, I'm even like, as far as I'm concerned, he's going back to Cincinnati, and It's tempting to want to throw all this money away and really try and plug holes immediately and kind of do the 2021 offseason thing and bring in 8-9 guys and see, and hopefully that works. But if you can get 2 or 3 really top guys at their positions and then like just plug some holes with the rest of it. If you can plug, like we're all on it, we all love talking about the tackles, and left guard is still a question. I have no idea who's going to play left guard.
Big question. City So making the comeback.
I would love for it to be City So. I think he's.
But that means he has to improve.
Yeah.
Or even get on the field. So that's a big if too.
And like 2 years ago, he was a solid player, but like you have to acknowledge that he in the worst offensive line in football, like he didn't even crack the lineup, and so that's a little bit scary. But if you can go out and you sign Josh Sweat to some big money, maybe you sign Travarius Ward, maybe you get like, I don't know, freaking Christian Kirk just to drop a name that's kind of been going around. Like, you have the ball rolling. I don't think it's necessarily like an immediate fix, but I also don't think like anybody's expecting for this to be a 1-year turnaround. And like, it's great. Like if Drake May takes that sophomore step and proves that he is the guy that we all think he is, like that's when you go out next season. Because I'm pretty sure, I don't think it's a ton of cap. I don't think it's nearly the same level that we have this year, but I think we're still like top 10 in cap space next year. And like, then you have proof, and you can go say to these guys who are on the market, like, you want to play with Drake May, you want to play with a good defense. Like, Josh McDaniels is in his bag right now. He like throwing all the money and trying to plug all the holes right now. It just seems like you're trying to put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole.
Yeah, no, I hear you completely. I think, you can make 1 or 2 big name moves, like you just kind of mentioned, that don't have to be like the T. Higgins level soap opera that story has become. Exactly. And I think Patriots media made it just such a big storyline throughout the season because we weren't going anywhere. And just now that we're actually getting reports out of Cincinnati from people hearing around the league, it's just kind of becoming tiring. And like, I get like, I have two different views on this kind of situation, and one is that like objectively he's the best offensive player that you can get in free agency right now that is skill position, because obviously you can make an argument that Ronnie Stanley is probably the best player on the market, but that's you're less likely to get a guy like that, and it's obviously going to draw out a certain amount of attention. On the other side, it's like, I get that it doesn't happen very often that a guy of that talent level, from an offensive standpoint, ever makes it to free agency. But man, like as much as I like the player, I don't think he's done anything in his career worth the amount of intrigue and hype that we're getting. And it's like, just what he's being compared to, the value of the contract. A lot of these things I'm not sure has been earned. Granted, he had a great end to the season once he was actually healthy, and him and Joe Burrow have a fantastic rapport. But I'm just like hesitant to really like dive into him just because he's the best thing that's there. And we're probably going to have a similar conversation about some of the guys on the draft board come April. But it's the T. Higgins charade is getting old to me. I think you mentioned a guy that, honestly, if I had to have one guy be a Patriot at the end of this offseason that's not through the draft, I love Travarius Ward. I think you instantly take a load off the secondary with him in the mix, and then obviously we have a philosophical change with Vrabel, his linebackers, and his safeties. So we might end up getting someone, that like what Vrabel had in Tennessee. If we can, obviously it's not going to be, some players of that ilk. We're not getting Kevin Byard for no reason. But I just think that can open up our secondary, which was really torched by a lack of talent and depth, and just guys that fit their roles correctly last year. And Travarius Ward, I think, you have 2 lockdown corners, and you don't necessarily have to draft Travis Hunter 4th overall to get them. I like that, because I think with that 4th pick, the closer we get, the more I'm just like, whatever, and we'll talk further about the combine, but whatever we get those measurements on Sunday about Will Campbell's arm length, I hope that's another narrative that's really tiring me out. I hope that puts some conversation to bed, but I think I might just be like slamming on Will Campbell. I'm convinced with the passage of time that the player that I think might be the best in the draft, outside of I get positional value, Mason Graham is listed as someone that's potentially a generational tackle at his pick, at least in terms of collapsing the pocket. Not so much in terms of bringing the quarterback down, but there is still value in that. But Abdul Carter would have been the guy. I think you're right. I think that immediately helps your front line. And I don't think he makes it out of the top 2 picks in this year's draft. I really don't. I think that we went into the offseason talking about how, well, now we can't get Hunter, but now we should really be having Abdul Carter conversations. And just the more these things circulate in the media, the closer we get to the combine, the closer we get to the draft, it appears like one of those 3 teams that picks before us, Tennessee, Cleveland, or New York, all 3 of them can't be stupid enough to not take Abdul Carter. And I would say it's probably most likely the Giants. I don't know. It is hard to dictate because, like, if Myles Garrett stays in Cleveland, I'm not sure that moves in their best interest, and maybe they're very much in the Cam Ward sweepstakes. I don't buy Shadur Sanders going top 5. I think, again, the Daniel Jeremiah thing that I read this week was just about how he believes, and again, this is a personal opinion, but that Ward and Sanders have kind of separated, and that some of Ward's kind of intangible athleticism that Shadur doesn't have really sets him apart. I think Cam Ward's going top 3. I know Abdul Carter's going top 3. And I really don't see Shadur. Maybe if the Giants really want to sell out for brand recognition and to play into that New York market, maybe they make a dumb move and they take a swing. But I don't imagine Travis Hunter will be there at 4, but there's a much more likely chance, I think, of him being there than Abdul Carter, which is unfortunate. Yeah. I mean, I'd still love to have Travis Hunter, but I'm almost worried that you make that pick, and then you're watching Will Campbell in 10 years be a consistent starter, and you're just looking at Travis Hunter and saying, what if he actually stayed on the field? Or maybe he played his whole career at corner, had some injuries, whatever else, and we're like, damn, what if we played him at receiver? I would, if we're drafting at 4 and we're taking the most enticing prospect in the draft, which a lot of people say Travis Hunter is, I want him as a receiver, and I don't think he wants to be a receiver. I think that obviously he listed himself as corner, probably more for like a bureaucratic thing with the combine being that the DBs go before the wide receivers, so he can kind of progress in order there. I think the orders of this week go like, first you're going to get a lot of the kickers, DL, linebackers. Those guys are going to come in, they're going to do their interviews, they're going to do their measurements, then they're going to do some workouts, and then it goes DB, tight end, running back, QB, wide receiver, and then offensive lineman. So Travis Hunter really, like, if he wanted to start doing his defensive back work, and that's going to be kind of the second group along with tight ends that goes, and we get a lot of that information. It just makes more sense because then he's doing a lot of those drills and things. So I don't know if we can read too much into the tea leaves of, him taking like the DB slots for interviews and workouts and measurements and all that stuff. And honestly, it doesn't matter as much because the interview is probably the most important thing either way, with us talking to him one-on-one, seeing where he fits in our plans and where we fit in his. But again, I think Will Campbell is probably the most surefire move we can make, and that's even with him potentially moving into left guard, because as you said, left guard is a big what if. And while Sidy Sow showed some promise and is a bigger body that might lean more towards Vrabel's tendencies for how his offenses work, or rather for Josh McDaniels' offense, I think is more aptly put. I still, you fit Will Campbell in there. I get a left guard top 5 pick isn't sexy, but man, can that really change the outlook of an offensive line and potentially take some of the pressure off the exterior guys, those tackles that really underperformed last year. And it looks like we're getting one of them back in the building, the much reviled Demontre Jacobs. So
I know. Isn't that crazy?
We'll see. Yeah, I mean, I would have rather last season. It was so bad from both standpoints, but I would have been like, I'd rather keep Lowe in as like a hybrid, third string in the depth chart tackle that can maybe fill either hole if needed. I thought Demontre Jacobs was virtually unplayable. Like I really was low on him, and not that PFF grades mean anything, but he was like historically bad from a lot of their metrics.
Well, my thing with Trey Jacobs is like a lot of it was just like the stuff that you have coaches for, like, and like say what you want about Gerard Mayo not running a tight ship. He was jumping off sides like every freaking 5 plays. Like, it was bad. And like that's not even talking about the holdings that he was drawing to, but just to like kind of go back and like talk about like the quarterback, like with Cam Ward, like you can you can see the ceiling. Like he could be a franchise quarterback. But I know that's crazy to say because he's probably not the surefire prospect that Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, or like even like obviously like the 21 where we got Mac is like I mean 5 quarterbacks went off in the first 15 picks and like that was the most at that time, and I think last year reset it. But like being able to see it, I think, is huge for the quarterback position. And like a spot where I went wrong on that was like what's it called, Bone X. I think I didn't see franchise quarterback potential with him, and obviously
but it's too early to say that yet.
Yeah, that's my thing. I think a lot of quarterbacks can probably be okay and like not show the full bag in their first year. And obviously Mac Jones, like we saw here firsthand, like it was happening week 7 and 8. Like this guy was kind of falling apart and things weren't going as smoothly. And obviously they had the famous like not letting him throw into the end zone. But talking about the quarterback is super important for Patriots fans. It's going to determine who you take with that 4th pick. But if Campbell comes in with under whatever it is, under 3/4 arm length,
under 33 inches at any any capacity, yeah.
I don't even know what you do there. I've been wrestling with that for. Obviously, you want to say trade back and like just in.
But but everyone wants to trade back.
Yeah.
This is the thing, though, and this should factor into our analysis, is that I am infinitely more confident in our developmental capabilities with McDaniels and Marrone as the offensive line coach than I am with Mayo and then Scott Peters as the offensive line coach. I don't want to totally rip Scott Peters because some people will even tell you that we were better last year than we could have been at offensive line because we were so weak from a depth and talent perspective. I still wasn't overly impressed. Like, if you're going to play above your strengths, which in some ways they might have, you're still not hopping off sides or holding or being in an ineligible man downfield situation. Like, there was just so much sloppiness and a complete lack of discipline. And again, that goes up to Mayo for sure.
Yeah.
But I really do wonder if Scott Peters just had his hands full and really couldn't deal with the responsibilities of the task. We know Doug Marrone has handled, at the very least, the responsibilities of being an offensive line coach well enough to be respected throughout the league and then to eventually get a head coaching job. So I think that's promising. I'm not saying he's going to be great. I'm not saying our offensive line is going to, turn this magic corner and become top 5 in the league or anything crazy like that. But I really do think that Doug Marrone gives you a higher ceiling in terms of like what you can do from a developmental standpoint with a lot of these guys, and also like how much value you can get in potentially acquiring some guys through the draft. I mean, we're talking about Will Campbell. That's probably where I'm like, just do that because it makes the most sense. In my ideal scenario that I talked with you the other night, and I'm willing to change the first pick a little bit, you seem to be hesitant, and I don't necessarily think it's the weakest room to address. However, like if there was a way to trade back to like 12 or 8 or 9, and then be able to take like a Tyler Warren and then use the additional assets to trade back up into the first round to get Ariante Aristide, I think you and I, while maybe differing on where we want to go with that first pick that we take in the top 15 or wherever it is, I think you and I both love a scenario where we get assets, get a guy. It could be a Mason Graham. It could be it could be Will Johnson, corner out of Michigan, another great pick that you could potentially take there. Again, that's barring us actually going after Trevarius Ward. But I like Ariante Aristide. I like his size. I think I like his fit in the McDaniels offense, and I think you can get him in the mid to late 20s, and he'll be maybe more valuable there than taking one of these two unknowns, I guess, in Kelvin Banks and Will Campbell in the top 10. Although to call Will Campbell an unknown is pretty disrespectful to a guy that's been impactful his entire career and a leader of that LSU team, especially last year when it had such a high-powered offense. So a lot of questions.
No, yeah, and that kind of brings me back to my point. Like right now, I mean, you can say with certainty right guard. And that's it as far as I'm concerned on the offensive line. Center, like if you want to put David Andrews, like that's a huge question mark. No offense to the Mr. Andrews, no offense to Cole Strange, like or Ben Brown, who they also signed back. Right tackle, like as of right now, I'm pretty sure it's Trey Jacobs. Like left guard, we don't even like City So, Cole Strange, like Ben Brown's probably also in that discussion. Left tackle, like I don't even know who's on the roster as of right now to play left tackle. So you have a lot, and hopefully you can plug at least one, maybe two holes in free agency, and like maybe you sign a couple guys after the draft. But you have to take a guy for the future up front, and ideally, if it's the trade back situation and we're at 9, and I think Tyler Warren's probably he offers you some explosive talent that you don't have, and you probably haven't seen maybe since Hernandez left. I mean, I know that's crazy to say, but I don't think Gronk was necessarily the most explosive guy.
I mean, Hernandez, kind of like Warren, was like a receiver essentially.
Yeah.
Although Tyler Warren is a more complete blocker in tight end than like a Colson Loveland would be, Michigan's tight end. So I think that he provides you a little more versatility there. But you're right.
Yeah. And I think that's big. I mean, I think obviously Vrabel is Mr. Versatility. At least he was when he was with the Patriots. And I think being able to come out and show we're in 12 right now. We're in 13 or we're in 11, but it's really 10 because we have like Tyler Warren can line up as a slot receiver and
yeah.
I love the idea of being able to play like a little bit of a like. I don't even know, like disguise, and so I like that. But I think if you're at 9 and Pat McMillan's on the board, like throw a dart. Like we got like he's falling rapidly. I saw a tweet today that said he wouldn't go till 15. Like Luther Bird might go ahead of him.
That's not going to happen.
I think purely based on size. Like
I think the Jets would take him, especially if Garrett Wilson's still a discontent. I think there's a lot of. I don't know. I mean, I still see people projecting him to go 4 to us, which I think is
ridiculous. No,
that's overstepping your bounds from a value standpoint. And I get it's like, well, if you would take that player at 10, why not take him at? Well, it's like, but again, positional value when your team is weak in a lot of areas, like you got to just go for the Will Campbell.
Exactly.
You can't second guess what can be a slam dunk. Not that there really is one outside of Hunter and Carter. So that's It's just we're really just kind of in peak speculation season, and again, like another thing is apparently Mike Reese had suggested that Mason Graham might be an option for the team at 4, and that they'd be seriously considering him because of the depth needed behind Barmore, Godshaw, especially with Barmore's future uncertain. I mean, blood clots can really derail careers. I mean, we've seen them be overcome as well, but I mean, we just had Victor Wembanyama with blood clot in the shoulder, I believe. He's out for the season.
Done.
Which is really disappointing because that was a guy that was going to win Defensive Player of the Year, be like a second-team All-NBA player or something of that nature. So, I mean, I know this isn't ex-Celtics, but that's an unfortunate, I think, happenstance for the league, but it also shows like the severity of the situation. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I don't know. We have a lot of questions in that interior defensive line. I like Mason Graham. I don't love it, and I don't love it at 4 necessarily. But if we trade back to 8, I might, as you said, rather than go crazy and take Tyler Warren, maybe you're just like, hey, we can still run 12 with Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry. We can't like collapse a pocket from the interior defensive line, particularly without Barmore to save our lives. So let's maybe address the bigger need. I still think as a prospect, Tyler Warren was like my favorite player to watch in college football this year. Like watching a tight end go for like 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, it just blew my mind. And I think that there's a lot of intangibles to his game as a receiver, and I think he's serviceable, being a blocker. And I think if we were to take a tight end, taking one that, like, I don't want to take a strictly receiving tight end right now. Like, I want to take a guy that can have some level of support in the run block game and the pass block game, because we just need any sort of support, pass or run blocking protection. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I mean, again, I think you and I are probably lockstep in that Will Campbell should be number 1 on our boards if there's no trade back, which it's hard to see one where we don't lose value rather than gain value. And if we do end up going in a different direction, then we better damn well trade some picks and get up and take. All right, so after some connection issues with our not so lovely podcasting software, we kind of wrapped up talking about Ariante Ursary taking the tackle late in the first if we don't take one in the top 5. So any other kind of draft talk notes that you want to get out of the way now? I know we're going to have a lot more to talk about next week, but just any of your thoughts going forward?
No, I think I agree with you. I think if you're gonna wait on addressing it, you better be aggressive in the back half of the first round. I don't think I mean, it's been said a million times. If it's been said once, you're not going to find the franchise guy past maybe early day two. This isn't early 2000s, 1980s football anymore, where you can just find these sleepers undrafted, or you're going to have to take some swings, and with taking swings, like, you're going to strike out, and that's also comes with the territory. But I'd rather go down swinging. So
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we have options, and I think another argument for not taking Mason Graham early is that, like, if you do want to have, again, not maybe a franchise-altering guy, but again, depth at defensive tackle, in some edge positions, there's something to be had there in the second, third, fourth round, even maybe. But yeah, as far as receivers go, as far as tackles go, if you want one that's going to be productive, you got to go in the first 2 rounds, probably, depending on maybe where, some of these other guys, where the Trey Harris of the world go, where the Matthew Goldens of the world go. Like, you can get productive players. I don't think we're going to get necessarily someone as dynamic as Tech McMillan or Luther Burden. But, I mean, Burden's one of those ones where if you somehow traded back to 15, then maybe that's where you go. But that's not, I think, a conversation anyone's seriously having. Like, who would trade up with us? Because we're not in a great position. Like, again, like, if Carter and Hunter aren't on the table, I really don't see many people wanting to trade with us. Whereas, like, if you want Shedeur, maybe you're looking to trade with, like, the Raiders or someone else. Like, maybe you want to be in that sort of sweet spot. Again, I'm not counting out the Giants' stupidity. I'm not counting out a desperate Joe Schoen making a move for Shedeur to kind of try to get his confidence up and get confidence in the building up and to maybe play to the media a little bit. But I don't know. I think we're going to find out. We're going to find out. I don't know. It's this draft talk has been long and arduous, and we're going to keep it long because we're going to talk about it every week, and we have to talk about it every week because our opinions change, other analysts' opinions change, and it just it's just the way it works.
Yeah, there's not too much football to talk about. But
we had AVP got hired. He is now a senior offensive assistant for the Rams. So
good for him. That's a good landing.
I mean, honestly, if you had to take a job after such a disastrous season, that's probably a great place to be, just in that building. Because, I mean, so many of the guys in that building probably are going to move on at some point for bigger and better things. Obviously, the Nick Caleys of the world have been thrown about in conversation, as well as, Mike LaFleur? Is that the brother of Matt?
I believe you're right, yeah.
It's some M name or something. I don't remember. But, yeah, so good for him. Good for him. I got nothing. No ill will towards him. No. I personally didn't necessarily agree with a lot of his philosophical understandings of the game. However, you can't deny that he was able to get something out of Drake May and what was the worst offensive roster in football. So that means something, and it means something that even despite the Bills putting zero effort into a game, we still got a lot out of Joe Milton, enough to where people are throwing around silly trade talk ideas that we'll inevitably talk about the closer we get to draft day. But, I mean, I don't see the second-round pick baloney that people are throwing out there, let alone some of the craziest takes have had us, trading our first and Joe Milton for, like, futures and then another first and just a whole lot of stuff. Like, we're not trading our pick to the Browns for Joe Milton. Or trading our first pick in Joe Milton and then, like, a second-round pick to the Browns for Myles Garrett. Like, that's...
Nope.
Yeah, that being part of the narrative has been, like, ridiculous to me. Just so silly.
Frustrating.
And frustrating because it makes people talk about stupid things, but that's what people do. That's what sports media does. So what are you going to do?
Yeah. No, I hope our goal with this podcast is not to... I actually don't know if you've checked out our ratings. I was under the impression that we weren't doing so well. We've been steadily building. We've got some good
Nielsen ratings. Yeah, well, that happens when you regularly post and not take like 3-week breaks here and there. But at the same time, we did try multiple times for various scheduling reasons and whatever. Like, it's tough to get some filming time in, understandably, for both of us to be ready and willing at the same time. But I mean, still make it work.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. and
Well, there's also
TikTok
just
has
a
been
ton.
restored. So I guess
Yeah.
our most successful platform, pretty much anyone's most successful platform, because it's the best algorithm to get people views. So I guess it doesn't mean as much, but at the same time, it means more because we're getting a lot more views there than YouTube. So
No, I agree.
go
But
figure.
our whole view is not to we don't want to be the freaking pricks who talk about dumb trades and who says no to Myles Garrett for Joe Milton. But
Yeah, who says no?
yeah, exactly.
The Browns? They'd probably say no to that. Yeah.
But yeah, we want to share our thoughts with you guys, with Colby. I hate saying his name. I
I mean,
love saying
it's
Colby.
not like we're really doxing him. I think the only other person that would hear it is him. The only other person that's
Sure.
made it this far into the podcast
This far,
is
yeah.
one Colby Ray. So, hi, Colby. Welcome. We're glad you're here. We love you. We miss you.
Yeah,
And we
I might
hope
give you a
you're
call,
building
man.
up that arm strength at Tennis Hall.
Yeah,
But any other thing Patriots-wise you want to discuss? We have, obviously, Jeremiah Farms back in the building.
yeah.
Released Sione Takitaki, which might, add to some of that philosophical change under Mike Vrabel. We got Drake May going on Chris Long's podcast. He also got him, I think people have run with this story a little bit too far, but teasing 90s blue throwbacks potentially, or just maybe a reversion to that, which I don't want the same jersey, but if we could do a 90s blue home, like that style,
I love the
I
Bledsoe
hate the
blues.
blueberries. I hate our uniforms right now. They suck. The whites suck too. Even though you put those mismatched gray pants on them, which somehow make the blues look better, it still doesn't look good.
No.
We need to, at the very least, just go back to Tom Brady era jerseys. Like those 2014 jerseys, like those jerseys were class. Like they just eked professionalism and winning culture. Now I get why you want to start a new era. So again, if we could do some 60s reds or some 90s blues.
Nah, I'm all about the rebrand. I think it's a great. This is. I was on the ride to work this morning, and I figured I'd turn on the Sports Hub, and they were just talking about like this year being the year that we could look back on and saying like that was the year they bottomed out. This is it. It's been a struggle since Tom left, and even the Cam Newton year. Like there were. And Mac Jones rookie year, like there were ups and downs, and at one point we were ranked the number one team in the AFC with Mac Jones. Like let's be done playing games. Let's build for the future, and let's build something sustainable.
Let's leave the blueberries in the Mac Jones era, shall we?
Let's leave the blueberries in the Mac Jones / Bailey Zappi era.
Well, Google's AI seems to think the Patriots may bring back throwback uniforms, possibly royal blue ones they were in the 90s. And what is their source? The next bulletin just talks about Drake May, hinting at it, which is basically just like, yeah, the fans want it. It would be cool. Like, people really got nothing to talk about this time of year.
Nope. No, this week will be good. I don't know how many of you guys will be watching the combine. I don't know if you will either, but it's a good time. We'll be able to watch, and we'll have more to talk about next week and in the weeks to come, and leading up to the free agency and the draft. I mean, free agency's 2 weeks away, give or take.
Yeah, was it like March 2nd, 3rd?
3rd, I think, yeah.
So yeah, those first 48, 72 hours might mean a lot for the Patriots.
For us?
If anything, for us, absolutely. But if anything, just like to know what direction we're going in with the draft, I think, because that naturally just irons out a lot of skill-based need issues as well as what those needs are amongst other teams. And if you start trading picks for players now. So we'll see. I am really not against trading for a veteran receiver. I think given how weak this receiving class is, especially compared to last year, I don't mind the idea of just throwing a second and a third at like a solid veteran or something. Like I don't. I think, again, like I personally believe Stephon Diggs did a lot to impact Josh Allen's growth as a quarterback to the point where then you can outgrow a guy like that and then you can build from the ground up with a young core. And I think that could be potentially valuable for Drake May too. To what extent and to what price is the question, but I don't know. I'd be excited to see us make some interesting moves, but I think signing Javarius Ward would be kind of a great start if that's at all possible. But again, we have the money for it, so might as well try.
And we don't like talking and comparing Drake May and hoping he's going to be Mahomes. I don't think that's reasonable. I don't think it's reasonable to compare him to to Brady either. I think the best comparison, if you really want somebody to look forward to, is Allen because of obviously their play styles, their physicality. But at the beginning, like when they made that move for Diggs, like they had a good defense, but that offensive like their whole problem was they couldn't run the ball, and Allen was always under siege, and so. It works both ways. Where if you have a guy open right away, like you can just get the ball out of your hands, and that's easy. But there's no science to going about it. So that's my point. So I mean, as long as I think it's a Perillo quote, but getting good players in the building is the key. So I'd love to see the team take some swings, like I said, and just let's try and turn this ship around one player at a time and one day at a time. So.
Let's get this train rolling. I'm
obviously very excited for the Red Sox. I don't know if you saw today, but they had a little tussle with the not a tussle, but the game they had a game with the Yanks that got
delayed, right?
Yeah, but yesterday, freaking Bregman going yard,
2-run homer.
Crochet going an inning and 2/3 and striking out 4 of the 5 batters he faced. Like that made me
the boy Justinson getting some ribbies.
Yeah, we're loving it, dude. We're loving it.
Hell yeah, dude.
So, stay tuned.
We'll be back. We'll probably talk some Celtics too. Who knows?
Yeah.
The Celtics are getting more exciting by the week. I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying the fact that they were resting players, getting guys healthy, and they kind of mean business now.
Yeah, that was a tough stretch.
It was brutal, like in December for sure. But I think we're now on the other end of that big old slump. So see what happens.
Agreed.
Kristaps back in the lineup full time is very, very nice luxury to have for sure.
Agreed. If they don't repeat, it's gonna be a sad.
And before we go, I'd just like to apologize on behalf of the ExPats Podcast to the country of Australia. I don't really care about you. However, using the word mediocre in a public space is pretty harsh. And you're a beautiful country with lovely people. Now, those people might not want to copulate with Lucas, but that doesn't mean that they deserve to be derided publicly on the internet. So, Australia, you're beautiful. We'd love to visit you. Probably not from a press standpoint for Patriots football, because that's almost a full day's worth of travel, and I don't think anyone wants to do that. Anyone with a pulse, at least.
Gotta be a break on that flight.
You did say you don't have much of a brain. You just watched, Nickelodeon Slime Fest. So
on TikTok,
I'll take your word for it. Yeah. So
no,
Australia. Better luck next time. We'll get you. I mean, Lucas, I thought he was a fan of you guys. Apparently, he's not.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But
fortunately, your love life prospects look better in the States than they did a couple weeks ago. So that means maybe the women of Australia have been spared. Maybe not permanently,
spared.
But you've been spared
For the time being.
Yeah, for the time being.
She said, "Don't talk about me on the podcast," and I was like,
"Did you talk about?" You didn't even have to mention to her. I was very vague about. We won't dox anyone on the podcast outside of Colby. So.
She'll be laughing if she hears this far. I doubt she will.
No way. No way.
She just texted me, "How's the pod going?" Great.
You should check about 53 minutes in and see what the conversation matter is.
All right. Been fun.
Lucas is talking to his aunt. If you guys haven't, Lucas and his aunt are in a burgeoning relationship that could be the start of something very beautiful. I'm not sure what the laws for that are in Massachusetts, but I think there could be really something special in the works there between Lucas and his.
Love is love.
Yeah. Apparently not anymore. Not with Trump in office.
True.
There might be a lot of stipulations on that now. Dog. I don't know. True. Could get banned tomorrow. What are we to know?
Ain't that the truth, brother?
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
Not to get political on expats, but
yeah, I mean, mostly in jest. I'm not gonna make any sort of serious conversation points on a platform
that's next week.
Yeah, that's next week where we really get into it. Yeah, we talk about the Iran-Contra situation in the 80s with Ronald Reagan, and we really get into holding our past presidents accountable. So that'll be next week on ExPats. That'll be our story time. But yeah.
All right, we'll see you guys next week. This has been
Yeah.
ExPats.
This has been ExPats. Peace out.
Deuces.
Sorry, Australia.